All right, appreciate everybody coming out. Kind of quickly review Michigan State. Actually, before getting to Michigan State, address Fred Hansard. I won't get into the specifics of it, but Fred will be done, for the season. Had to undergo a surgery and will be done for the season. So, I know all the guys and the families and the coaches and his parents are very, very supportive of Fred, but he will be unavailable for the rest of the season. Getting into specifically Michigan State, critical statistics that we talk about every single week. The turnover battle, we were even, and we didn't win, and we had a bunch of opportunities to really win that. That was significant in the game. Penalties were significant in the game, especially either the pre-snap penalties or the post-snap penalties that are correctable. Drive start, I think, was big. The difference, we ended up winning that by a little bit, but the reality is we had two inside the 10-yard line, one at the 2-yard line, one inside the 10. I thought that was a major factor in the game, and although the sack battle, we had 3 and they had 1, we were pressured a lot. So that and then the explosive play battle, I think probably one of the mistakes that we made is we were pretty focused on being patient with the run game, and we were able to get the run game going and ran the ball on them better than anybody had all year long, but we weren't as explosive as we need to be in this offense. So I think they're the main things that kind of jump out. And then the last point I'd make is, we had gotten better all year long. Felt like that week to week, watching the tape. Felt like that during the games. Felt like that after the games, watching the tape. It did not feel like that this past week. So obviously we need to get back on that track. From an Indiana perspective, got a lot of respect for Coach Allen and what he's done. Really a good guy. I've enjoyed getting to know him both personally and professionally. Really good guy. Kind of looking back from a historical perspective, lost to Indiana the year before we got here, 2013. But Coach Allen, this is his second season there and has done a nice job. Got a defensive background. I think everybody realizes that. You look at their staff. Mike DeBoer, the offensive coordinator, has been doing it a long time, 36 years, 18 years as a coordinator. Been very successful. They do a nice job on offense. They're a spread offense. They got a dual threat quarterback who's improved dramatically as a thrower. They're spreading the ball around. They have 6 receivers with 18 catches or more, and then they're an 11 personnel or 10 personnel team, but majority 11 personnel, 1 back, 1 tight end, and 3 wide receivers. Guys that kind of stand out as the quarterback, Peyton Ramsey's doing a nice job. Kid from Cincinnati, Ohio, 68% completion ratio, but is really distributing the ball around well. Running back Stevie Scott is an interesting guy. Forced us to go back and kind of look throughout the recruiting process. A kid from New York who's playing for him as a freshman. He's a big kid, 6'2", 236 yards, and is doing a nice job. And then they got 4 wide receivers: Jay Sean Harris, Donovan Hale, Nick Westbrook, and Ty Freifogel, I think is the way you pronounce that. Obviously Jay Sean Harris is a guy not only on offense but also on special teams. Has made a bunch of big plays. He's a guy, you get the ball in his hand in space, and he's challenging. And then defensively, Mark Hagan is the defense coordinator, but him and Tom Allen, are doing that together. I think the big thing with them is turnovers and disruption. They do a lot of different things on tape. They're very specific, game plan week to week. They change a lot week to week. They have seven games with an interception. 6 out of 7 games with an interception. So doing some really good things there. And then obviously, a decent amount of sacks. I think they're 11th in the FBS in sacks and 20th with tackles for loss. So doing a great job there. They're a 4-down defensive front. They play robber coverage. They pressure a decent amount, 46% overall. And then we're impressed with number 99 defensive end Alan Stallings, linebacker number 42, Marcelino Ball, and then strong safety number 9 Jonathan Crawford, guys that stand out to us. And then defensive coordinator William Inch, I've known for a long time, is doing a nice job with them. And then obviously I already talked about Jay Sean Harris, who's a guy that we target going into the game, saying that we got to make sure that he does not impact the game as much as he has impacted others to this point. So, open up the questions.
Rich Scarsella, Ready People.
Hi, James. How are you?
Hey, Rich. How are you, buddy?
I'm okay, thanks. James, you said Saturday that the issue on offense was not being able to throw consistently or successfully against Michigan State. After watching film, why did that happen? And Miles Sanders has just 9 catches. Is that by design or are teams taking that away?
No, you guys have asked those questions before about design. For us, we basically draw up our routes and our schemes that are very similar to what they've been in the past, with a few tweaks here or there. And it's all about what the defense is doing and quarterback going through his progressions and things like that. So we don't have a whole lot of situations where we're really getting to a point where we're saying the ball's going to this guy or this player, unless it's a screen or something like that. We need to be more detailed. We need to protect a little bit longer. We're not giving up a whole lot of sacks, partly with Trace's, how mobile he is, but making sure that we can hold on to the ball in the pocket and be able to get the ball down the field more consistently in clean pockets. A little bit more detail-oriented in our routes, the depth of our routes, being able to create separation in our routes, and then being able to consistently, make the open catch or be able to make the contested catch. It's kind of a combination of all those things, and I think obviously also, being a little bit more accurate as well. All those things. It's not one thing. It's all of it, together. We just got to be a little bit better in all those areas.
Bob Flanders, Harrisburg Patriot News.
How are you doing?
Good, Bob. How are you?
I'm good. We went through the season. Just I want to get your thoughts on special teams overall, how they play, and what are the areas you feel like you definitely need to improve for the second half of the year.
Special teams? Sorry, I sound a little muffled. I think, for the most part, our return game has been pretty good. Kicking, from a kick-off perspective, some stuff that you guys probably wouldn't know in terms of the calls that we're making and things like that. I think we're getting good distance, and we're able to kick the ball in the end zone, for the most part. But a lot of times our location can be a little bit better in terms of what we're trying to get done. From a field goal perspective, obviously, we need to be better there. We need to probably create a little bit more pressure in practice, making sure that on offense, defense, and special teams that we're treating our preparation Sunday through Friday as game-like as possible. I think last week, in practice, I think we hit field goals at mid to high 90 rate. So, we're seeing really good things, but we got to be able to transfer those things from the practice to the game field at a little bit higher rate. Obviously, the fake punt is something that we got to do a better job of. We worked on those things all week long. Had a plan, had somebody responsible for that, as well as other guys, and we just didn't do our job, consistently there. So obviously we got to do a better job emphasizing and showing plays. Most of the things that showed up, that fake field goal that they ran is the same exact fake field goal that they ran against Notre Dame. And shown it all on tape and watched it on tape and repped it during practice as well. So obviously we need to be clear with those things.
Derek LeVar, Wilkes-Barre Times leader.
Hi, James. Good afternoon.
Hey, Derek, how are you?
I'm doing well. James, being in a similar situation last season, what are some of the things you think that helped the team get back on track, on or off the field, after Michigan State lost a year ago?
I think the biggest thing for all of us, coaches, players, everybody involved in the organization, is sticking to our process and focusing on the things that we can control. Making sure our players are doing that as well as the coaches. Focusing on our schemes, making sure that we're being as detailed as we possibly can in meetings, that we're holding everybody accountable to that standard every single day at practice, and that the old guys are helping the young guys mature as much as they possibly can to understand, the seriousness and significance of that standard. So, I think that's the biggest thing that we have to do is make sure that we're, sticking together, that we're staying positive, and that we're focusing on the things that we can control and get those things fixed and get better at it. Because obviously last week we did not do that.
Mark Wogenrich, Allentown Morning Call.
Hi, James.
Hey, Mark.
What is the attributes in your mind of a successful 4-minute offense, and do you think you have it right now?
Yeah, obviously that's something we've spent a lot of time talking about since we've gone to this offense. We've had a lot of discussions about this part of the game. Obviously when you go to a spread offense, it's a little bit different than running a traditional offense, and had these discussions really over the last 3 years. I think the challenge is you want to run the ball as much as you possibly can to burn timeouts. But ultimately, just like Trace's run on the third down play, the most important thing you got to do is get first downs. For us, that is running our offense and doing both throw and pass. The challenge is if you throw the ball and you throw it in completion, the clock stops. And that's obviously, not what anybody wants. But if you run the ball and you don't pick up the first down, it really doesn't matter. You got to be able to do both, and you got to be able to pick up first down. That's the number one most important thing. I think that's what happened to Trace is we tell them all the time, if it comes down to getting the first down and running out of bounds, the first down takes priority, because being able to get a new set of downs is much more important than staying in bounds. So you got to make that decision. If you can fight and get the first down, then you got to fight to get the first down. Obviously that wasn't the situation on Saturday, but I think that's the challenge is when you're running a spread offense and they can outnumber you in the box, you have to be willing to throw the ball. And we also have to understand when you throw the ball, they better be high percentage throws where you're able to get people in space. Because if you throw an incompletion, the clock stops. We don't want that either. So that's the challenge. And we have had a lot of discussions, with Joe, had a lot of those discussions with Ricky and Matt and our staff now. And I think that obviously is a very, very important piece of the puzzle for us over the last, really 2.5 years. We got to get better in that area. There's no doubt about it.
Frank Bodini, your daily record.
Hi, James. Good afternoon, Jim.
Hey, Frank.
Your defensive tackle, it seems like you're losing bodies frequently now. What do you do, or how do you see that situation beyond your starters? And what do you do starting right now in the second half of the season to shore that up? You can't use it just 2 guys the whole game, obviously.
Correct. We got to keep developing those other guys. P.J. Mustafer, Antonio Shelton, C.J. Thorpe, and Damian Barber. We're gonna have to develop those guys. Damian's gonna have to factor in now and be able to get some work for us. PJ's gonna have to grow up fast. Obviously, as a true freshman, and having Antonio Shelton, obviously we've seen some good things from him. So those guys are gonna play bigger roles. There's no doubt about it. That's the situation we're in. Feel good about what Kevin and Robert are doing, but they're gonna have to help those other guys out as well. CJ, this is all new to him, and we obviously need these young guys and guys that we have moved positions need to have a chance to mature and grow up and understand the responsibility of what they need to do for our defense to be successful.
Joe Giuliano, Philadelphia Inquirer.
Hi, James.
Hey, Joe.
Another question about the defense. It seemed like you played more players, more of your backups on defense during the Michigan State game. Were you pleased with the way they played? Do you think that this depth is developing a little bit better? And was there be any factor down the stretch as it was against Ohio State?
What was the last part?
Was there be any factor like it was against Ohio State down the stretch?
Okay, the key word was what I missed, I'm sorry. I think, to be honest with you, I think, defensively, we played good enough to win that game. I think, what I would say is, if we get the turnovers that we should have got in that game, and that was, I think they had the most fumbles in the country last week without losing any. I think they had 4 fumbles and a couple interceptions that we didn't get. We get a few more of those turnovers, the game is completely different than the way it played out. So that's the area that we have to get better is the turnovers. I thought we did a pretty good job. I think they had been averaging about 123 rushing yards a game. I think we held them 123 rushing yards. So about where they had been. The passing game, they made some plays, but we also had a bunch of opportunities to make some plays as well and could have made more. I think that's the biggest difference is we got to get more turnovers when we have opportunities to make those plays. I think we all realize we got to make more of those.
Mike Gross, Lancaster Newspapers.
Hi, Jim. How are you?
Hey, Mike. Appreciate you.
Our defenses, I guess Michigan State for sure, but defenses in general, are they doing anything or putting different or putting more emphasis on taking away traces, passing lanes, and even running lanes to some extent?
Yeah, what I would say, I think the biggest difference on Saturdays is we didn't hit enough explosive plays or throw the ball well enough. When you're able to throw the ball and now stretch the field horizontally and vertically, that makes it more challenging for them to defend Trace in the running game as well. Because if we're keep completing balls down the field, stretches the underneath part of the defense, those guys loosen up, start getting under those throws, and then that's when Trace pulls it down and takes off. And when I sit in with the defensive coaches, that's what's so challenging. We were able to run the ball on Saturday better than anybody had against that defense. We weren't able to throw the ball as effectively as we needed to throw the ball on Saturday. That was the difference, in the game. I think, really Trace's running, usually, if you look over the last 3 years, his running comes as a byproduct of how well we're throwing the ball, and now the defense can't be right. You're running the ball, you're throwing the ball, and now Trace is able to hurt you for a couple runs a game. And then that's when we are our most dangerous on the offensive side of the ball. When you feel like we're able to do all three at a pretty efficient level.
Donnie Collins, Scranton Times Tribune.
Hey, Donnie.
Tommy Stevens has only played a handful of plays since he was deemed ready to return. What has to change for his number of snaps to increase?
Yeah, I think if I'm correct here, he's only been available to us 2 games. I think the last 2 games. We talked about him earlier being available, but then we felt like it was probably still in our best interest to hold him. So we fully cleared him to go. Ohio State, that's the coaches, trainers, everybody being comfortable, Tommy being comfortable. So last week it was more of a scheme thing, and we just didn't think it made sense in that game. But we'll look at it every single week to see if we feel like it gives us the best opportunity to keep the defense on their toes and keep the defense uncomfortable, whether he is a decoy, whether he is a runner, whether he is a thrower, whether he is a receiver. And we look for those options each week. A lot of it deals with formations. At certain formations we look at against our opponent, create opportunities, and they're plug and play plays where we can put Tommy into that role and it makes sense against this defense in that scheme, then that's when we do it. So everything is pretty much formation driven from that point on.
Corey Geiger, Altoona Mirror.
Hi, James. How are you?
Good, Corey. Thanks for calling.
James, this is Ricky Ronnie's first full season calling plays. How would you evaluate his performance overall in that regard, particularly late in games? And what areas would you like to see improved?
Yeah, I think we had a decent amount of turnover on our staff this off season, and overall, short term and more importantly long term, I feel really good about the people that we got sitting, in the seats that they're in, and feel really good about that from a long term perspective. Does experience count and does experience matter? Yeah, there's no doubt about it. All of us get better every single day. The longer we're in the positions that we're in, as long as we're open to listening and to learning and to challenging ourselves and challenging others and being challenged ourselves, then you have an opportunity to grow. But the experience matters. There's no doubt about it. And I think Ricky is doing a really good job. I think, like all of us, there's a few calls that he wishes he has back, and I think he'd probably say that for every offensive coordinator in the country, and we'll be saying that 5 years from now as well. But overall, big picture, I feel really good about my staff and where we're going. But again, I don't want that to be misconstrued. We can get better, and we will get better.
We'll open up to questions here in the room. Raise your hand and we'll get a mic to you.
Hey James, how you doing?
Good.
I'm doing good. Given the lack of production of some of your veteran receivers, do you think it's time to take a look at some of the younger kids, especially the true freshmen? And with that said, what are the challenges for true freshman receivers playing at this level that the ordinary person may not take into account?
Yeah, I think that's a really good question. I think we do that every week. We're constantly looking and saying, is there someone that can help us? We do have a lot of confidence in those vets, and I think obviously we feel like they're going to have one of those breakout games, and we feel like that every week. But yeah, is there some young guys that we're looking at? Yeah, I think obviously Justin Shorter had a setback during camp, which kind of slowed his production and experience, being able to gain those reps and those experience in practice. Daniel George has done a really nice job, and John Dotson has done a really nice job. You see some of the other guys getting some reps in complementary roles. For Daniel, he's big, strong, and he's explosive, and he plays that way. For Jahan, he's one of these guys, the game just comes very easy to him. He's a natural football player, and Justin has a lot of ability. But I think your point is a good one. Running routes in high school, when you're very rarely going against another Division I athlete, and you may see one, maybe two, on a crazy week, maybe 3 coverages, and then also how those coverages affect your route. So now not only do you have to be able to beat the defender over you physically, but then you also have to know all the nuances in terms of how the routes get adjusted based on certain coverages or pressure or blitz or those types of things. And that time and that chemistry with Trace, I think that's what you've seen a few times this year, where you see Trace go to throw the ball and he pulls it back because he's expecting the guy to run a route differently than the way it was run. So what we're trying to do is kind of a combination of those things, get those guys up to speed, but also be a little bit more consistent with our running backs, receivers, tight ends, in the passing game, because that's obviously an area that we're not probably as explosive or as efficient as we need to be right now.
Audrey?
James, you guys are something like 6 of 31 on third downs the last 2 games combined. What are you seeing maybe on first and second down that's not setting that up, and how do you go about making sure that improvement happens week to week?
Yeah, I think a couple of things. I think the first thing is, we've talked about this before. The reality is the best offenses have the least amount of third downs. You're picking up most of your first downs on first and second down. I think the other thing that I think is important, obviously, is the more efficient you are on first and second down, then you're in more manageable third down situations. So obviously those 2 things, I think, are the 2 main indicators. I think all the way back to the bowl game against the University of Washington, that was probably the difference in that game, how well we did, on third down with our plan and our execution of that plan. But I think the biggest thing is the same things you're seeing on third down are the same things that we have to get better on first and second down. It's the details, it's the consistency, it's the contested catches or creating separation in our route running. It's a little bit more protection. It's all of it. It's not one thing. I think if it was one thing, it would be easy to solve. But obviously, it's an emphasis for us.
Thank you, sir. You good?
Good. How are you?
Good. Hey, right now, after the last 2 weeks, now a good time for you guys to get out on the road, kind of circle the wagons a little bit. What are some of the benefits you guys can get from getting out to a road game?
So you're talking about a way
as a team, yeah. Is now a good time for you guys to kind of get out on the road and kind of,
I'm not sure. To be honest, I'd like to play all 12 games in Beaver Stadium if I could. I don't know if the conference will allow us to do that. But yeah, I think obviously being able to go play on the road. I know Tommy Stevens from being from Indiana back here in the Hammer are excited, and it's a change of pace. It's different. It's a 3:30 games, allows us to get there, play the game, and then get back in a reasonable time as well. But to be honest with you, home, away, wherever it is, it's really more about us and playing the way we're capable. I think the biggest thing is, as I said, I think in the very beginning of this is, I think we played really well. Week 1, week 2, week 3, we kept getting better. And, we did not play that way last week. I think everybody's probably focusing on the last 2 weeks, and I get that. But I did not like the result of the previous game. But watching the tape and watching the game, we played well. We got better that week. We didn't do that this past week. So, are there a lot of reasons for that? Yeah. And we just need to get back to focus on the things that we can control. So, away game, home game, whatever it is, we just got to make sure that we don't lose our focus, and we're making sure that our guys are concentrating on the things that truly matter, which is us and our execution and our passion and our fundamentals and techniques and our execution of the assignments. That's what we need to focus on, not where the game is played, not who the opponent is. It's about us, because if we just would eliminate, 5 or 6 of the unforced errors, missed assignments, penalties, drop balls, things like that, things that we can control, then I think we'll like the results.
James, after the game, Trace said that this team needs to be stronger now more than ever and needs to come together. You guys were able to do that last year after a couple losses. There were a lot of key seniors that were behind that with Jason and Marcus and those guys. Are you concerned that the team maybe is too young to do that this time around, or are there any challenges in that regard with how young this team is?
Yeah, we have a younger team. There's no doubt about it. We got less of those guys that have been through this type of adversity before, but the ones that we have, I do think have really strong voices and are culture drivers for us and have been really good. But does it strain those guys? Yeah, because there's less of them. There's no doubt about it. Obviously, each week when we watch the cut-ups and go through situations as we're coming up with the game plan, we typically are watching the previous game. The previous game against that opponent from the year before. And you see guys like Marcus Allen who played a lot of football for us, and Jason Kavit who played a lot of football for us, and the D tackles and so on and so forth. We have less of those guys, on offense and defense. So those guys have to have stronger voices for us. There's no doubt about it. They've been through this adversity, they've been through the challenges before, and we got to push our way through it.
How you doing, Coach?
Good.
You mentioned Trace McSorley showing some reluctance to fire the ball downfield in certain situations. His percentage for completion is down about 12.5 points through 6 games. How much of that do you attribute to what Trace is doing, and how much really goes towards maybe that trust and some disconnect downfield when you said not quite as efficient where it needs to be at receiver?
I think it's a little bit of all of it. Too many drops. Not enough detail in the routes and the execution. Protecting a little bit longer, so he can be a little bit more comfortable in the pocket, more consistently. I think it's a little bit of all those things, I truly do. And I think what happens sometimes is early in the game, if he gets in a situation where he's expecting one route to be thrown, be run, and he don't, it gives him hesitation. He's got to have, a one-play mindset where, okay, that may happen early in the game, but you got to trust it's going to happen the next play. So it's those types of things. But I think it all affects it.
How reliable, I'm sorry, just follow up real quick, how reliable was that aspect of the receiver group last year, the pass targets? Because it sounds like this may be kind of a new element for Trace in his approach.
Well, yeah, I think, obviously Mike Gesicki had played a lot of football for us. Deshaun Hamilton had played a lot of football for us. Saeed had played a lot of football for us. So, obviously those guys were obviously people that we had spent a lot of time talking about in the offseason that we were going to need to replace. Jawan had played a lot of football for us in a complementary role, and Polk and DeAndre as well, and they need to take the next step. And obviously coming into the season, we felt very confident about that and still do. But we need to do it week in and week out consistently at practice and games.
James, over the last 2 years, Indiana limited Saquon Barkley less than 60 yards and less than 3 yards a carry. What is it about Indiana's scheme that makes it so tricky to go up against? And why do you maybe see Miles Sanders having success this time around? What does he need to do to kind of break out of that?
Yeah, I think that goes back to what I was saying before is, this head coach and this defensive coordinator, from what we see on film and from what we have studied, they probably more so than most. Most people are going to stay to their base plan and have subtle tweaks each week. They have a very specific plan against each formation and back alignment set on how they're going to stop what they think are the 2 or 3 things that you do the most from a tendency standpoint. And it can be pretty different, watching them on tape. So that's always the challenge is, what is the defense of the week going to be? So, I think that's where you've seen them improve defensively. They've done a really good job. They play aggressive, they play fast, and they got a pretty good plan. But it's also, it's a lot of check with me stuff. You see a lot of stuff on tape where they're looking to the sideline. The expression the coach uses, who's going to have the chalk last to try to get the perfect call into the game. And there's some things that we think we can do to help with that as well. But we've been pretty consistent this year, probably more consistent in our run game in terms of eliminating negative yardage runs and tackle for loss and things like that. I think that's really helped us this year. I think that's Miles and his approach, as well as the O-line and tight ends, factored into that as well. But there's going to be some of those things that come up as well. Saturday they're going to have some times where they catch us. And I also think that's an area where Ricky's doing a really good job, where where there's not too many plays where the ball's being snapped and you got a free blitzer coming off the edge as soon as we're handing the ball. I think there's been less of that. So combination of all those things.
James, a lot of emotion obviously these last couple of weeks, and you mentioned you didn't see maybe the improvement this last game. You also talked about some different fundamental things that came up in the last game, which hand carrying the ball, some line of scrimmage. Was there so much emotion invested 2 weeks ago against Ohio State, and how have you reined all of it in and processed these last 2 weeks as you look forward?
Yeah, obviously, whenever you lose a game, there's an emotional investment that you've made as an organization, as a program, for the season, for the week, and for me to sit here and say that those things don't have an effect. Yeah, they do, but you got to find a way to push through them. As players, as a coaching staff, as a whole organization, everybody has setbacks. That is football, and that is life. And you can't allow, whether it's one play to affect the next or one game to affect the next. And that is internal, the things that we can control, and that is also our guys doing a great job of muting the external noise as well. I've said this before, obviously you don't fill up a 110,000 seat stadium without passion. And when we win, it's the greatest thing ever.
Hey James, how you doing?
Good, how are you?
Good. You mentioned before that you don't feel like your staff gets enough credit for developing players as much as recruiting them. Guys like Garrett Taylor, Jan Johnson coming in and not being big names that then play very well for you. On the flip side of that, as a developer of talent, how do you know when a guy is stalling in his development or maybe can't or isn't getting better, and how frustrating is that for you?
Yeah, I think it's obviously, most importantly, those things show up on Saturday, which at the end of the day, that's all that matters. You know, were you able to produce when it mattered most? And that's for players, that's for coaches, that's for all of us. But obviously, the games are a part, but also things that you're seeing, you know, every single day at practice. What you're hearing in the weight room, you know, what you're hearing academically. That's a huge piece for us here at Penn State and within our program. That's what I'm hearing from the strength staff. That's what I'm hearing when our guys are doing community service. It's all of it, you know, and I think that's what is so special about college football, and I think that's what's so special about Penn State is the greater impact, you know, and I get it. We're in season, so the focus is on football. And that's ultimately what we're responsible for. But I also know at Penn State we take great pride in all the other things. So when we talk about development, it's development of all of that. It's development of, are they getting bigger and stronger and faster and more explosive? Are they getting more fundamentally sound in terms of techniques and things that we ask them to do on the football field that's going to translate to games? It's maturity. It's how they're dealing you know, with a fan. That's how they're dealing with people in the community. That's how they're interacting on campus, off campus, when it comes to community service. It's all of it. It's all of it. It's how we handle with challenging losses. That's a football lesson. That's a life lesson. So when I talk about development, I'm talking about all of that. I'm talking about how the program has developed over the last 4 or 5 years. I'm talking about how our players have developed. I'm talking about graduation rates. I'm talking about all of it. And obviously, you know, last week was hard, and the week before was challenging. There's no doubt about it. But I will tell you, just like I tell our players that I want us to do everything we possibly can to prepare Sunday through Friday so that they can put their head on the pillow Friday night and be confident waking up Saturday morning. And I think our guys do a really good job of that. I do the same thing. Now, don't get me wrong. You know, losses are tough, and I agonize over them as much as anybody, and I know our fans do as well because they're invested. But I also know that I sleep well at night knowing that our program has grown dramatically over the last 5 years. Is it where we want it to be right now? No. Is it where anybody wants us to be exactly right now? No. But I know we're headed in the right direction. I know our players are growing and getting better, both on and off the field academically. I know our coaching staff is as well. And then the type of father I am, the type of husband I am. And that. So when I talk about development, it's all of that. It's all of that. And when you see guys like Saquon Barkley come back last weekend, and the things that he says to you privately in the locker room, and get a chance to talk with Michael Motti, and he stops by the offices and how he's speaking about the program, and so on and so forth. I know we're doing it the right way. And what happens is, in any organization, with any CEO, with any team, there's typically 3 steps forward and 1 step back, and that step back is painful, and you gotta learn from it, you gotta grow, and you gotta evolve, and you gotta get better. And that's what we're going to do.
Hey James, how's it going?
Hey, Ben.
Your second sentence of your media day opener, you said that you had more question marks to answer this year in a very, very challenging schedule. Did you, not that you expect to lose, but did you expect a season like this, and do you think that people maybe underappreciated the hill that this particular team had to climb to get back to where you wanted to be from the drop?
Yeah, I think with the conference that we play, and the side of the conference that we play in, it is always going to be challenging. And that's why you come to Penn State. That's why you come to the Big Ten. But it is going to be a challenge. There's no doubt about it. When you have Penn State, Michigan State, Ohio State, Michigan, go on, keep going right down the list. It's going to be a battle week in and week out, and we compete with those teams 365 days a year, and we graduated a bunch of experienced players. So yeah, I think obviously we knew we had some tremendous challenges to overcome, but also had a lot of confidence. Had a lot of confidence. And I think, as we all know, whether it's high school, college, to NFL, one or two plays each game are significant. And sometimes those plays go your way, and sometimes they don't. And what you got to do is you got to keep focusing on your preparation and the things that you can control, so that more of those plays go your way. I think we've talked about that in the past. I mean, I remember in the past coming into these, and there would be calls that media and fans were questioning in terms of officiating and things like that. And my response then was, we got to make sure we're doing everything that we can, that margin of error is not so small that one or two plays or one or two calls that go against us don't determine the game. And that's really where we still are. We've made tremendous progress, and I like where we're headed, and I like what we're doing. But I also think your point in the beginning was, we're very aware of the challenges that we had coming into the season, but I think we also had tremendous confidence, and still do. But back to the point that I think was asked earlier, we have some guys that we got to lean on, and there's less of those senior experienced players right now.
Last one.
Hey James, how you doing?
Good, how are you? What is your name, I'm sorry?
Mike.
Hey, Mike.
Garrett Taylor, he had his best game of the year on Saturday. How would you assess his progress at the safety position there?
Yeah, I think Garrett's a great example of kind of what we're talking about. Garrett's a guy that's joined the program, came from a great family, came from a great high school program, wasn't ready, a couple years ago, but just kind of kept getting better. And his role continued to improve, his role continued to grow. And he's one of those guys that I think the coaching staff feels like he is really maximizing, his ability and his opportunity here. We talk about, setting our guys up for success after they leave here in terms of championship habits when it comes to football, when it comes to life, when it comes to business. He's a guy in every single meeting, he's sitting there, he's taking notes. He's taking notes, he's writing down things that are important, he's highlighting things, he's underlining things, he's jotting stars down. He's just one of those guys that really gets it and says, look, I have this amount of time, I got these opportunities, and I want to maximize them. He's killing it in school. I couldn't be more proud. He's one of a bunch of examples that we have on our team. And I think he's also an example of everyone's journey is going to be different. We've talked about that here. Some guys are going to come in and they're going to start from the fourth game of their freshman year, and then they're going to get drafted number 2 overall, and that's going to be their journey. Or there's going to be a guy, another guy like Grant Haley, who has a great career here and has a great career academically and gets signed in a practice squad and then just gets bumped up to 53-man roster today, and Big Ten championships and all these things. And everybody's journey is going to be different. But I think that's also where, understanding that and supporting that, and understand that not only is every single player's journey is going to be different, every season and every team is going to be different. And we're on this journey together. Our players, our coaches, the fans, the administration, the media, we're all on this journey together. And I will tell you the one thing that's probably for me, was a pretty good reality check, is I turn on the TV on Saturday after our game and I watch other people. There's a lot of other programs across the country that are on similar journeys that we're on. Some are emotional highs, and some are challenging weeks and adversity that we have to overcome. And, we're going through a similar story that a lot of programs across the country go through.
Thank you, Coach.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Before we bring Cole Farmer in, just a reminder, men's basketball media day is today at 2:15 over at the Bryce George